Hey, sorry for the delay. Thank you for joining me. This is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Appreciate you guys being here. For those of you that are catching this on replay, hit me up in the comments with the hashtag replay. For those of you that are just joining me live, as you come into the stream, do me a favor, hit me up with your name, the city and state you're logging in from, and I'll give you some shout outs before we start the live Q&A today. So that's where we're at. It's Monday, June 1st. Yes, it's June. The year is flying by. We're approaching halfway here. So, it's always interesting. I have a tendency to get really busy this time of year, juggling things because I always want to work on different projects, but I also want to be able to do things around the house, around my property. And so I'm sure you're feeling the same way, trying to fit it all in. And so I'm excited that you're here. Thank you for joining. Again, we'll do some quick shout outs. Hit me up with your name, city, and state. And then we'll do some shout outs before we jump into the Q&A. If you have questions about freight broker startup or freight broker sales or freight broker operations or anything in between, that's why we're here today. We're going to do live Q&A. I'm going to try to answer all your questions before we leave here. I'm a little bit limited for time, so we're probably going to try to limit this to about 30 minutes. So hold your questions until I say go. And then, because if you don't, they're going to get lost in the feed. Okay. So let's do some quick shout outs. And as people get live, we'll go from there. Jim Brown, as always, from Atlanta. Welcome, my friend. Anthony from Dublin, Virginia. Jarvis Davis from Birmingham, Alabama. Damn, I'm glad I got my glasses on. Latasha from Houston, Texas. Eclectic Rose from Colorado. James from Albany, New York. Jabril from Philadelphia. Joe from Jersey City, welcome. Dennis from Lexington, South Carolina, welcome. Dennis, thank you for joining. He's also part of my Sales Accelerator program. Shane from Utah, as always. Jaquel from Elizabeth, New Jersey. We got John Michael, Freight Hustler. Yeah, always here. Richmond, Virginia, welcome. Corey Buchan from Billings, Montana. Miriam from Philly, PA. Joe Curry from Chicago right now. Over the road in Chicago. Awesome. Jabril is part of my Freight Broker Bootcamp program. Welcome. Thank you. Gene from Indiana. SWE Trucking. Welcome. Linnell from Maryland. So we got a lot of people joining from all over the place. Awesome. I love it. So happy that you guys are here. Again, we're going to be doing live Q&A in just a minute. Hold your questions until I say go. I think what I'm going to be doing, at least for the interim, especially for the summer, is I think I'm going to be doing these live Q&As every 2 weeks. Okay. Once a week is just seems like a little bit more than necessary, right? So I think we're going to start doing these live Q&As bi-weekly. Obviously, look to your email because I always announce it via email the morning of. But I think I'm going to be doing these every 2 weeks, okay? I think we'll get a lot more questions. Probably what I'll do is I'll probably extend it to maybe 45 minutes to an hour as opposed to doing a shorter Q&A. But, I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted on how things are going on that front. Bobby from Kentucky, welcome. All right, so shout-outs are over. The ball is in your court. Who has questions? We're going to limit this to 30 minutes. Okay, I'm going to set a timer. Siri, set a timer for 30 minutes. Okay. Perfect. All right, guys, listen. The ball's in your court. Hit me up with questions. I don't care if it's about freight broker startup or freight broker sales or freight broker operations or anything in between, anything to do with becoming a freight broker or a freight agent. And I will do my absolute best to try to get those questions answered for you. Again, thank you so much for being here. If you guys are, excited about the Q&As and you want me to continue to do these at least once every 2 weeks, make sure you hit the like button. I look at that feedback as the type of feedback that keeps me motivated to do these free live Q&As. Again, there was no credit card for you to be a part of this Q&A. It's a free service that I offer to everybody, right? For the time being, I've been told that I should be charging for it, but I don't. So in any event, Let's see what we got. Great question, Jarvis. I love it. What separates your program from others and what's the benefit? Okay. So really quick story. Number one, I built 4 different multi-million-dollar companies in 4 different industries. Okay. So I'm not a one-trick pony. Okay. So in 2003, I started my freight brokerage, did over $200 million in sales, sold that company. But along the way, I started Freight Broker Bootcamp. And I started that program because I had so many people coming to me and say, hey, listen, can you teach me? Can you teach me? Can you teach me? Can you teach me? And I didn't have time. So I put the online course together, and that's where I would direct everybody. Well, over the years, it became very popular. And when I sold the freight brokerage, I had a lot of people asking me to help and to get more involved. And so I really dug in. And since then, we've trained I tell everybody in my promotions that it's over 10,000. I checked recently, and it's actually over 20,000. Okay. 20,000 students worldwide in 16 different countries. All right. And that is my Freight Broker Bootcamp startup program. So the biggest difference between my program and what you're seeing online is that you will see a lot of programs where people have never built a successful freight brokerage. Maybe they've got a couple customers here and there. Maybe they've brokered a few loads. Maybe they've even built $1 million brokerage. Okay. But the reality is, my experience, 30 years as an entrepreneur, 4 multi-million-dollar companies, and growing one of the fastest growing freight brokerages in the US, which is now, since exiting the company, doing almost $500 million in sales. Same management team, same everything. Okay. Same business model, same everything. So ultimately, that's probably the biggest difference. The second thing is, we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. There's nobody that does that. Most programs don't offer a guarantee at all, a money-back guarantee. We offer 60 days, any reason, unconditional, right? So that's how confident we are you're going to be happy with the program. If you're not, just send us an email. We'll give your money back. So you can literally kick the tires, try it, and if you don't like it, give it back, and we'll give your money back. So that's how confident we are. I mean, there's a lot of other nuances inside the training, I'm sure. Although I haven't looked at my competitors' training. I don't really care what they teach. I teach what I know. I teach what I did. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. But I love the question. Thank you. What's the best way to set up a business email address to send and receive emails? Well, typically, when you buy a domain, okay, like ABC Trucking or Freight Broker Bootcamp or whatever domain name you buy, whether that be with like GoDaddy or Bluehost or any of the companies that sell domains and then host websites, they offer email services associated with your website URL. So that's typically how that works. So if you buy a domain, they'll say, hey, do you want email with that domain? And then if that's the case, then they'll walk you through step by step on how to set up your username and how to log in and how to check it and how to set your passwords and all that. So that is probably the easiest way, because if you're a broker and you have your own brokerage, you're going to want to get your own domain name for your business, right? I mean, that's something you're probably going to want to secure. And then at that point, you're going to want your email to match the domain name. So if you got a follow-up, let me know, but that should be fairly clear. Okay, Jaquel asks, what's the best way for me to get into heavy hauling produce equipment? Interesting. Okay. Well, if you want to get into heavy hauling, right, first of all, you have to understand that heavy hauling is probably one of the most complex niches, or one of the few top most complex niches in freight. And the reason being is because you're dealing with overweight, over dimensional freight, right? It's large freight. You've probably have all seen things like a turbine, being driven down the road, or something that has, is super wide or super heavy, things of that nature, right? Things that require permits and things that require escorts and things that require a lot of coordination and complexity. So understand up front that heavy haul is a great niche, but I caution you to be very careful jumping into the heavy haul niche without doing a lot of due diligence and without really doing a lot of research. Now, if you have experience in that niche, if you have experience doing heavy haul from either side, maybe it's from the shipper side, maybe it's from the trucking side, maybe it's from the dispatch side, maybe you were an inside broker for somebody and you did heavy haul, then I get it. But I typically don't recommend that be the first niche for a new freight broker to jump into. It's something you can definitely expand into, but because of the complexity, I just would caution you. Okay. So now beyond that, let's assume that you checked all those boxes and you're sure that you want to jump into heavy haul. It's just like any other niche. It's really simple. You're going to make a list of prospects that are in your niche. Now, you said produce equipment. You've already identified produce equipment. So there are manufacturers, distributors, auctions, different providers that have to ship produce related equipment. Now, I don't know what the produce equipment is. I'm assuming it's agriculturally driven. I'm assuming it's pickers. I'm assuming it's planters. I'm assuming it's tractors. I'm assuming it's all kinds of farm and agriculture related equipment, which is great. I like it. But here's the thing. You're going to have to know what that type of equipment is. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go build a list. What I recommend when building a list for any niche, okay, I have a free tool for you. I'm going to put it in the chat box right now. Actually, I'll put it in here. Let's see. Let me put it up here. There it is. Okay. If you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads, you're going to be able to sign up for Apollo for free with no credit card. So you can get logged in and you can start searching their database of millions of different businesses around the world. And you're probably focused on the US. And what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to identify based on the industry type. You'll be able to identify based on the geography. You'll be able to identify the titles of people, whether they be shipping manager, logistics manager, and you'll be able to find those people in that database, all for free. Okay? Cost you zero. You could build a list of 100, 500, 1,000 people in minutes, literally minutes, once you get in there and you kind of get your feet wet a little bit. Okay? And then from there, now you've got a list. So, I'm not sure that's kind of what you were asking, right? I don't know if there was a follow-up to that, but you were asking, let me just make sure I'm correct. What's the best way for me to get into heavy haul produce equipment? Okay. So you're going to make that list. And then from there, once you make that list, now you're going to have to start doing outreach. Usually the outreach is going to come in one of 4 different strategies. You're going to use the phone. You're going to cold call. You're going to use email, cold email. You're going to use LinkedIn, social selling, or you're going to go face-to-face. Those are the 4 primary channels. I recommend doing a multi-touch point outreach strategy, a multi-channel approach where you're using as many of those as you can. Sometimes doing face-to-face is not realistic because, they're not located in a nearby geography and you're not going to travel halfway across the country just to try to prospect somebody unless you have a really, really good reason. So yeah, that's really what it comes down to. And at that point, when you're reaching out to them, the key here, and this is what I teach and did myself, and that is this: you need to be different. You can't sound like every other broker. Otherwise, it's going to automatically trigger a negative response. And then that negative response is going to end your phone call very abruptly, probably in the first 15 to 30 to 60 seconds. And you're not going to be able to build any rapport. You're not going to be able to build any trust. You're not going to be able to ask any good questions. And you're going to get blown out of the gate if you sound like everybody else. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. Okay. Linnell asks, walk us through the shipper broker agreement. Okay. The shipper broker agreement is designed to be a simple agreement that says, I, the shipper, am responsible for this. You, the broker, are responsible for this. If anything goes wrong, this is the protocol. Okay? That's the basic framework of what it's designed to do. If it's put together by the shipper, which a lot of times shippers have their own shipper broker agreement, they're going to say, you have to have X, Y, and Z. Whether that be some sort of insurance, whether that be some sort of, some sort of credentials of some sort. They're going to identify those. They're going to identify how they're going to be billed. They're going to identify how they're going to pay you. They're going to identify liability associated with negligence or anything that's from caused on your end. So they're really just a framework of what the rules are for operating together as a customer and a vendor. Okay, so it's not that scary. It shouldn't be that scary. Okay, but know one thing. Just know one thing. A lot of large shippers require a shipper broker agreement, but a lot of small shippers don't even require one. You don't need to have a shipper broker agreement in place in order to do business with a manufacturer, with a company, right? As long as they understand that you're providing service as a broker, and as long as they vetted you and they feel comfortable doing business with you, and you vetted them and feel comfortable doing business with them, I would tell you that probably out of the thousands of customers that we did business with as a broker, I'd probably tell you more than half of them never had a broker shipper agreement. It was more of a handshake type of an agreement. They were smaller to medium sized businesses, and they didn't require a shipper agreement. Now, the bigger the company, the more complexity, the more likely they are to require a shipper broker agreement. So I'm not telling you to not do it. I'm simply telling you that some companies think it's a requirement and some don't. So hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know, Lena. Is it a good fit for a retired person to work as a freight agent? Okay. So sure, why not? Yeah, I think that a retired person could do it just as well as someone who's in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I think it really comes down to what's your skill level, what's your desire, what's your discipline level, right? What's your commitment level? So I think that someone who's 40 and maybe they got fired from their job and they're now launching into a freight agency versus someone who's 60 and maybe they retired from their job and is now looking to supplement their income. I don't think there's any, I think that the person who maybe is a little older has a little bit more experience depending upon their background. So I don't see any negative with it, but I do think that like anything else, you have to treat it serious. This is not a side hustle. Being a freight broker, being a freight agent is not a side hustle. It requires education. It requires skills. It requires discipline and commitment. Okay. So anybody who wants to treat this like a side hustle, I would tell you don't waste your time. But if you want to treat this like a real business, okay, it can provide a huge return on investment. So hope that helps. Cynthia from Maryland's here. Welcome, Cynthia. All right. Question from Peter. Does the shipper normally initiate a blind shipment, or do I, as the broker, need to know how to set up a blind shipment properly to protect both parties? And if so, are there any tips you can provide? Yeah, if a shipper requires you to do a blind shipment, you are going to have to set up the blind shipment. They're going to give you the specifics, right? But really what it comes down to with a blind shipment, just so people don't understand, so they understand what this means, is that a lot of times companies that are selling a product, say I'm selling this bottle of this drink, okay, this ice drink, okay? If I'm a distributor of this, right, and I'm selling it to a buyer in Buffalo, New York, a lot of times I don't want that buyer to know where the product was shipped from. Okay. Because I'm probably not making it. I'm probably buying it from somebody who is a wholesaler or a manufacturer. And I don't want them to know where it's coming from. So that's a blind shipment. They don't want to disclose the pickup address, right, to who that is. So what they would do is they would use my address or use another address for the from address. And then on the bill of lading, and then that's what protects me, the seller, right, of the product from the company that I'm selling it to going directly to my source. That's what a blind shipment is. So the shipper will tell you the specifics of the blind shipment. It's not overly complicated. I mean, it's either, setting up a blind shipment is really just making sure that there's certain information that's not on the bill of lading. That's really all it really comes down to. It's not that complex. So hope that helps. Tips on proper setup for blind shipment as far as paperwork goes regarding BOL. Yeah, it really comes down to just not including. The shipper is going to tell you exactly what they want you to do, and then you just need to do it. There's not a lot of complexity to a blind shipment as far as setting it up. You're not going to include certain information on the BOL or on the shipping records, right? You're not going to provide that information so that the other party, whatever the other party is, the consignee, consignor, whatever it is, can back solicit. That's really what it comes down to. Betty, welcome, welcome. Okay, here's a question from William Jennings. Thanks for everything. All your trainings, Dennis, today, 6-1. If you started from scratch, what's your blueprint to go from 0 to prospecting by 7/1/26 niche, including free or cheap CRM? What's your blueprint to go from 0 to prospecting? Okay, so first thing you need to do is find your niche. Okay, identify your niche. Let's say it's produce, just hypothetically. I'm just running a hypothetical. Then I got to build a list. I got to use that, that tool that I gave you before, freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. You can sign up for. All you need is an email, no credit card. That's going to allow you to quickly set up a list. Okay. And then from there, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create our messaging. Okay. Before we start randomly just calling everybody, we're going to want to create our messaging, our cold outreach script, right? The framework of our script so that we don't sound like everybody else. So identify and create your messaging. And then from there, you're probably going to want to have some sort of a CRM. If you're going to be doing any volume of prospecting, 30, 50, 60, 80 calls a day, that's going to get very hard to track on a Excel or Google sheet. You can start there. But what I would tell you would be the CRM that I recommend, the CRM that I promote and believe is the best for freight brokers. I'm going to give it to you right now. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. I didn't develop this CRM. A friend of mine, Josh Lyles, did. Okay. What you can do is you can go in and you can go and check that out, right? That CRM, the nice thing about that CRM, there are lots of CRMs out there. Okay. But Sales-CRM was designed specifically for freight brokers and freight agents. Okay. So it's customized and designed for freight brokers. It's not a CRM that was designed for real estate or insurance or, or solar salespeople or, any of those other industries. It was designed specifically for logistics. Okay. So that's the cool thing about it, is that it's customized specific to logistics. You can go there, you can get signed up. It's very affordable. I know Josh. I've used the program. I've referred hundreds of students to him, and I've never had a negative feedback. A lot of the students that have went on to build successful freight brokerages are using his program. Okay, so that was basically your question, from 0 to prospecting. Niche included, free or cheap CRM. Yeah, there you go. That's what I would recommend. Good question. Miriam, after taking calls from carriers to determine load price, what's the good starting point to negotiate with carriers? What's a good starting point? Well, a good starting point is this. Let's say, for example, you get a shipment you need to quote from Buffalo to Atlanta, van load. Okay, just easy one pick, one drop van load. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the load boards like DAT and Truckstop, and you're going to try to identify using their rating tools kind of what the range is, what's the baseline. Let's say, for example, that we're seeing Buffalo to Atlanta on average. Let's just say hypothetically The load boards are saying $2,000. Okay, from for that load to pay to the truck. Okay, what I'm going to tell you is this: you can't base your quote on the rating tools solely. You have to validate it with carriers. So what you're going to do is you're going to search for carriers that have trucks posted in that lane. You're going to maybe post the load. You're going to search lane history and see other trucks that have posted in that lane in the last 60, 90 days. And then you're going to talk to those carriers. Now, the starting point is this. The starting point is uncomfortable for some people because you can't go and ask them, hey, what do you need for Buffalo to Atlanta? Because they're all going to tell you $3 or $4 a mile. Okay. And that's not going to help you, right? They're all going to start very high. So what you have to do as a broker is you have to start uncomfortably low, because what you have to do is what I call find the market. You have to find the spot market. So if the rating tools in my initial due diligence told me it was 2,000, I'd probably start my first at 1,500. I wouldn't ask them what they want. I'd say, listen, it's one pick, one drop, X number of miles, it's 1,500 to the truck. Now, I may get hung up on. I may not. They're probably going to negotiate. If they start coming in, if I get 3 or 4 carriers that are saying, oh, no, I could never, I need 1,900, and you negotiate it. And then one that says, I need 2,100, and another one that says I need 1,800, and another one that says, oh, I need 3,000. Well, you're going to throw out the 1,800. You're going to throw out the 3,000, and you're going to base it kind of on that 1,900 to 2,100. So I might probably take like a 1,950 and then add my margin on top of that. Maybe it's 150, maybe it's $200 margin, and then I'll give my all-in quote to the shipper. That is a very back of the napkin way to validate the rates from a rating tool directly with a carrier and then figure out your margin. So what you want to do is you got to get multiple confirmations and details specific with carriers. You got to validate it with carriers. And so the answer to your question is you have to start uncomfortably low, because if you don't, you start too high. The problem is if you don't get any pushback, you're starting too high. And that pushback is what tells you that you found the market. You're close to the market. That's when you're going to find the market, right? When I went in, I thought it was 2,000, but when I found out later, it was 1,900, but I had people that were telling me 3,000. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow up, let me know. Okay. Question. How long does the Freight Broker class and how much? Okay. Freight Broker Bootcamp is a self-paced online course, which means you can access it 24/7, 365 from your home. You don't need to travel anywhere where you have a computer or a mobile phone. You can access the training. Okay. And again, it's 24/7, 365, self-paced. You can go at your own pace. Now, most people take somewhere between 4 and 8 hours to complete the program over a 2 to 4 week period of time. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people learn it quicker. Some people operate at a quicker pace, but that should give you a little bit of a ballpark as far as the commitment level of time and energy on your end. The program starts as low as $185 one-time investment. Okay. There's a couple different options that you can get started with, but yeah, that's the Freight Broker Bootcamp Gold membership. If anybody is curious about my training, the one that I've had over 10,000 students go through, you just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. If you like what you see, pick either gold or platinum membership. Once you enroll, you will instantly get access to the online course. You don't have to wait till next week. You don't have to do anything else. You'll get instant access to the program, and we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. Okay? So I hope that helps. Good questions today. Joe from Miami. What can I do to get larger shippers to fall online as a new brokerage, to fall in line as a new brokerage? Well, I teach new brokers should focus on small to medium-sized shippers. And the reason being is this, because the sales cycle is shorter, access to decision makers is easier, competition is less, Okay, there's not as many rates, not as tight on rates. Their vetting process will not be as difficult as compared to a small or medium-sized shipper. So I'm not answering your question, but I'm trying to answer the question for the group. I'm not a big fan on new brokers trying to go after large shippers. You don't have the credentials, you don't have the pedigree, you don't have the experience in doing big RFPs. And I think that I've seen way too many new brokers try to go after large RFPs and just fail miserably and then wash out of the business. Whereas if they focus on smaller companies where maybe they can get 1 or 2 or 3 loads a week and start building some momentum and start building some cash flow, they can always take what they learn and then parlay that later into larger shippers. I did not do any large RFPs for my company for at least 6+ months after starting it. But in the meantime, we had landed a whole bunch of small to medium-sized companies and we were generating cash flow and we learned. And then at that point, we strategically went after certain large companies based upon how we specialized on our niche and how it would fit into the big scheme of things. But we didn't have to win a big RFP because we had all kinds of business coming in from small to medium shippers. If you live and die by big shippers, the problem is more people die than live. So I hope that helps. Okay, T-Landy asks, hey, Dennis, with the recent ruling from SCOTUS, what would your vetting compliance process be? Impossible for me to explain that in a short Q&A like this, okay? But what I can tell you is this. I can't tell you exactly how to vet because there is no exact formula for vetting. Here's what I can tell you. You have to make sure, just like always, you got to make sure they have their authority. You got to make sure they have proper insurance. And you got to make sure that they have the proper, obviously, equipment, right? And you also want to look at their operating history and their safety history. You need to take a much closer look at their safety history and their safety profile. So the biggest challenge right now with vetting carriers is the fact that we have a group of carriers that are satisfactory, we have a group of carriers that are conditional, and we have a group of carriers that are unrated. Conditional carriers are the biggest risk right now. So those are the ones that you want to vet the absolute hardest. And there may be a lot of situations where you may have to pass on those conditional carriers. There are about 7,000 or 8,000 carriers out there that are rated conditional based on the research that I've done. Now, the unrated carriers, there's about 690,000 of those. There's a lot of unrated carriers. So you also need to vet them properly. You need to look at what violations, what type of history do they have, what's their safety profile look like? And then you have to assess the risk, right? And again, I can't give you a step-by-step, really granular breakdown of how I would do it because this isn't the play, it's just impossible for me to do that in this format. But what you really want to look at is make sure, just like always, you want to make sure that they have the proper credentials. But then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to dive in. But what you need to do most importantly is once you determine that, you need to have a written policy for what your vetting process is. You have to determine what the vetting process is, and you have to set a criteria of what's acceptable and what's not. You want to have that in writing. Then you want to train your employees on that, and then you want to use that. And for every carrier that you do business with or don't do business with, you want to vet why you made that. You want to document, I should say, why you made that decision. That is the paper trail and the documentation that you need in order to hold up, showing that you're not just randomly picking some negligent carrier and that you had a real process, a defined process for assessing the risk of hiring that carrier to move that load. So that's really what you need. Okay, that's the alarm. We're going to wrap up with a couple of questions here. Okay, question from Freight Hustler. Dedicated power only bid, 16 loads a week, 2-to-1 trailer pool, up to 32 trailers. UFS provides trailers. How would you validate carrier interest and build trailer costs into the bid? That's a really interesting question. I'd have to give that some thought. It's not something I can answer right here. I think it's something I'd have to give some thought to. Validating the carrier interest, obviously the best place to start is with your existing carriers. Now, if this is a lane you've never run, or if this is, a project that you're not familiar with, I would tell you to obviously be cautious. As far as building the cost of the trailer into it, I mean, they're doing trailer pool, dedicated power only. Okay. Well, where are the trailers coming from? Are the trailers the shippers? There's a lot of questions I would have to ask in order to try to even break this down mathematically. So not sure I'm going to be able to help you here in this live format. I really wish I could, but that it's just there's a level of complexity that just doesn't lend itself to this type of Q&A. Do brokers typically need contingency insurance? No, it's not a requirement by the FMCSA. Some shippers require it. Some shippers don't. I would tell you the majority of shippers don't require it. Now, with the new SCOTUS ruling and broker liability, is that going to change? Are more shippers going to require some form of general liability or broker risk insurance or errors and omissions? Probably. Some will and some won't. But it's not required by the FMCSA in order to become a licensed broker. Some shippers may require it. But then what happens is if you are finding that in your niche, a lot of the shippers are requiring it, then you buy the insurance specific to what the requirements are to fill that gap. You don't need to do it up front, not knowing what you don't know yet. So I hope that helps. What CRM do you recommend for a small freight forwarding company? Same CRM as I said before. It would be the exact same one. It would be freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. It's called Sales Dash. Sales Dash, whether you're a freight broker or freight forwarder, it doesn't matter. It's the exact same sort of process. It's designed specifically for freight and logistics. So I would go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/CRM. It's, again, the reason why I like it, number one, is I know and trust the owner. Number two, it was designed specifically for freight. It's not a software CRM or a real estate CRM or an insurance CRM that you're going to kind of have to work around. It's not a generic CRM that's trying to serve everybody. It's specific to freight and logistics, and that's who it serves, and it does a good job. So that's where I would go. All right, we're going to wrap up here shortly. What would you recommend to me starting out as a freight agent? Would you recommend me starting out as a freight agent rather than a broker dealing with produce, being that I'm very knowledgeable in the food industry? Okay, I think that starting as a agent is a great place to start. The reason being is it allows you to focus on customers and allows you to start your business without having the entire weight of the whole business on you, meaning you don't have back office, you don't have the compliance, you don't have the licensing, you don't have the insurance, you don't have the software, you don't have to worry about any of those headaches as a agent. So I think starting as an agent is a great way to start. Here's the cool thing. Agent first, broker later. You can always pivot later to your own brokerage if you choose to. A lot of people have said, yeah, I really want to be my broker, but I'm going to start as an agent and then I'm going to pivot to a broker. And then they realize everything that's involved with being a broker and they just stay an agent because they're making 60 or 70% of the profit and they have little or no risk and they don't have to deal with the back office. So I think starting as a freight agent is a great place to start. If you have niche experience in the food industry, I think you'll do great. Obviously, you need to find a broker who specializes in, probably has some experience in produce, because produce is a niche that, number one, you're going to want to make sure you have a carrier database. They have an established carrier database that's more focused towards reefer and produce related niche. You're going to want to make sure they have experience with, how billing and claims and all that sort of stuff goes. But find a broker who has some experience, background in produce, and I think you'll do well. I have a very common question to ask. When speaking with prospects, sometimes they say, I already work with another broker, don't want to change. In this situation, what would be response? Okay, so here's the thing about sales. The only way you're ever going to get a customer is if a customer has need. They have to have need. Meaning there has to be some reason why they bring you on. They don't wake up every day and just say, hey, I think I'm going to add a new broker today. That's not what they do. That's not what they dream about. But if they have challenges and issues and problems and pain, then a lot of times they're trying to solve that pain, and a broker may be part of the solution. So if you find somebody who has no need, there's nothing you're going to say to convince them. The only thing you can do is build enough rapport, right? Gather as much sales intelligence as you can about the prospect and their product and their shipping and the pain that they're associated with that niche, and then get permission to follow up later. There's no sense in you trying to beat somebody over the head that says, we're happy with our current provider. Now, you can give them a rebuttal and say, yeah, there's all kinds of rebuttals to that. But the point is that what I want you guys to focus on is this. If there's no need, there's no sale. You need to find somebody who has a need. Need is typically associated with some sort of pain. That pain could mean maybe they opened up a new distribution center. Maybe they launched a new product. Maybe they recently acquired another company. Maybe, maybe they're brand new in this job. The old guy got fired. The last guy got fired. Maybe any numbers. And maybe they just kicked one of their biggest carriers out because there was some safety issues. Maybe they have new lanes because of a new customer lanes because there's high demand in specific lanes and they need coverage. There's all kinds of pain, and it comes in different shades and colors and texture, right? It's not all red hot glowing pain. Sometimes it's just a little bit warm, right? But it's enough to get your foot in the door. So you have to identify need. Trying to sell to somebody who doesn't have need is just a waste of time. Develop some rapport, get permission to follow up, and then follow up. And sometimes it's going to take you months. It can take you 3, 6, 12, 18. You may never get them, but ultimately, I followed up with companies for over a year. And then finally, after talking to them 4 or 5 times, they had some pain and my timing was right. And because we had trust built up over the last year, they gave me the opportunity, right? That's not what you want to hear, but that's ultimately what happens when people do not have a need. You have to wait until they have a need, or you have to show them they have a need. So one of the things you can do now by showing them they have a need, obviously, is this whole SCOTUS compliance, right? What is their risk associated with it, and how can you help them? So that may be an angle you may want to approach, because they're still trying to figure out what the risk is and what their next steps are. Maybe you could be their guide. That's one thing that I'd probably be doing. Can you advise Africa to go into sales in the US or to know how to go into? I'm a little unclear in your question. Can you advise in from Africa to go into? Okay, so you're from Africa and you want to go into sales. That's kind of all I'm getting. I think be a little bit more specific. Adnan asks, what do you recommend good load board as a beginner? Truck Stop or the DAT? Okay. Truck Stop or the DAT is what I would tell you. If you guys are, I think I have a promotional link that you guys can get a deal. Hold on. If you go to freightburgerbootcamp.com/load board, that's a link where truckstop.com puts promotional offers up where they'll give you discounts or bundles or packages. If you go there, you might be able to get a really, really good deal. But again, it changes. They change all the time. So you can check that out. That's, again, truckstop.com. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. Some have a little bit different, tools and suites and pricing, but those are probably the two that I would recommend. They're the biggest, and you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Remember, all you're going to have to do is cover 2 or 3 loads, probably 1 or 2 or 3 loads to cover the cost of the load board. And then from there, it's all profit. Load board is one of those tools that you absolutely need, particularly as a startup. Over time, you'll need it less and less. You'll still have it, but you'll need it less and less because you'll develop those carrier relationships and you won't have to post to the load board. You won't have to wait for carriers to call. You won't have to vet a new carrier on every load. So, okay, guys, we're going to wrap up here. Okay. My friend and I are watching. I've been a broker for 6 years, and I think he has the intelligence, charisma, and drive to make it as one. Can you explain what a freight broker is? Well, if you've been doing brokering for 6 years, you should be able to explain it, but I will give you a very basic explanation. A freight broker is a middleman that helps arrange transportation between shippers and carriers. And for doing that, for managing that process, they typically earn a profit margin of about 10 to 20% of the load. So for example, if the shipper is going to pay $2,000 for the load and you made 15% margin, that's $300 in profit. You'd pay the carrier $1,700, 2,000 minus 1,700 equals 300 profit. That is how a freight broker operates. They manage the process from A to Z. They don't own the trucks. They don't own the product. They don't touch the product. They don't ever even see the product, but they manage the process and they get paid. They get profit from it, typically ranging from 10 to 20%. Now, if you're an agent, then that agent gets a percentage of that profit, typically 50 to 70% of the profit, and the broker retains the rest. So hope that helps. I got a little long-winded there, but I wanted to get a little bit more, add a little bit more context to it. Jaquel, thank you for the compliment. Thank you for the nice words. Yes, the video will be available. The video will be available on replay. Okay, guys, listen. For those of you that we're going to wrap it up. For those of you that are looking for help on becoming a freight broker or freight agent, and you're struggling to put all the information together from YouTube and TikTok and Google, and you want a program that you can access 24/7 and go through at your own pace, and we'll teach you from A to Z how to become a freight broker or freight agent in 30 days or less, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Again, trained over 10,000 students, and we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're just looking for startup help, that's where I would recommend you go. If you are looking for sales-related help, specific sales-related help, coaching, training, okay, where you're looking, how do I get shippers? How do I find shippers? How do I do cold calls? How do I do cold emails? How do I overcome objections? How do I do that whole sales process? Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. That's for my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. It's sold out. You can't get access to it right now, but if you get on the wait list, you'll get notified when new spots open up. Okay. So if you're on the wait list, you'll get notified. If you're not, you won't. Okay. So get on the wait list, and maybe you get an opportunity to be in my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching program. And that's the way to do it. So thank you guys. You guys did a great job. You had a lot of great questions. I thank you for joining. I think we had like 40, 50 people live, which is awesome. So again, thank you for this. It will be available on replay, whether that be on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you want to check it out. Appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to be back in 2 weeks with the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live, not this next Monday, the Monday after. Okay. So that's probably going to be, I think, the 15th at noon, Monday, 2 weeks from now. I'll be back with another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live, and appreciate your guys' time. Appreciate you guys being here. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week. And I'll see you in 2 weeks on the next live.